We're live, so just wait for me to introduce you again. Anyway, greetings, gang. Going to get right to it. I cannot wait to read some of this stuff. I'm going first. Long story short, again, as promised, I have Alice Allen back on because there's a lot of information there. And like I said to Alice earlier today before we did this, is that her and I, for the last, she's been doing this a long time, researching, digging, um, going directly to the enemy, going in front of boards, commissions, you name it, fighting. A lot of people have opinions of her, but she's been fighting for you. I came in later. We had crossed paths a few times. And like I said to her this morning when we were talking about tonight, and she was telling, she shot me some information that I was like stunned. But that we've both been on the same highway in different lanes. I'm the guy that will bring the obvious and the easy to understand and digest for everybody. The simple stuff that why with this information hasn't this commission or anybody done anything, we all know the story. Why all the hesitation when it's clearly there, who's guilty? But there's a lot of little bit of there's eccentricities and nuances and everything, and just these little things that, like what I read before, blew me away. The people that pretend to be innocent and for the game and here the cradle of the trotter, it's so pure, it's where it began, it's grassroots, and all the people involved are only concerned about the future of the sport and the breeding industry in New York State. Bullshit. It's all bullshit. So anyway, Alice, just hang on a second. I'm going to read the disclaimer again. Okay.
All right.
All right. Which I lost. My clipboard gets thicker. Anyway, the views and opinions expressed by guests appearing on Equine Advocacy Alliance live streams are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the views, positions, or policies of Equine Advocacy Alliance. We are not responsible for any statements, claims, or opinions made by our guests. I got Alice Allen on again. What's going on, y'all fart?
Wow, I guess a whole lot.
Yeah, well, like you said, like we've said, a lot of people agree. It's all been out there, but nobody wants to acknowledge it. So we're going to acknowledge it. So what I'm going to start with is we're going to start with those two letters in support. I believe they went into the PSRs, pre-sentencing reports for Brandon Simpson. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes. I think they're interesting reads.
Well, what's interesting about them is, again, the people who are supposed to be the curators, one in particular, of the sport and supposed to protect us from people like Brandon Simpson and what he did, are writing letters to Judge Castell in support of him and making excuses for him, which is what I'm going to read in this one particular letter, as well as a local businessman who in his letter flaunts who he is, the business he works for, and it's supposed to be one of the most very well-respected gentlemen around, from the area, Mr. Fred Dana, who I made sure, and I did because I forwarded it to you, made sure he got a copy of this letter and what it is, and is he aware of it, and does he support and condone it? So anyway, I'm going to read first a letter from a gentleman named Mr. Raymond Schnitker. You all know Ray, right? This is his letter.
Everybody knows Ray.
Everybody knows Ray. Well, I'm talking to the cameras for anybody that's speaking. Everybody knows Ray. And up until a couple of years ago, I loved Ray. I had no problem with him. I wasn't close to Ray, but never a negative word until I started to question them, which is ironic because it's funny how some people, what do we always say? Little guys are not just punished, they're destroyed. And if you're connected to certain individuals, you get a pass or you get a letter in support like this guy. Here's a letter to Honorable Kevin Castell, Senior U.S. District Court Judge. This is dated September 5th, 2023. This is why Brandon was being sentenced. Ray says, I have been a trainer and a driver and owner of standardbred racehorses in New York area for the past 30 plus years. I currently operate a successful training operation of 40 to 50 racehorses, employ 13 people, and own a horse farm in Orange County. I have known Brandon Simpson since 2005 and consider him a good friend. He has always worked hard and been dedicated to his work. I found it upsetting and unfortunate that he felt obligated to take orders from his former employer to the extent that they were cheating in the business of harness racing. I'm going to go back to that in a few seconds. Alice, we'll have a little convo on that. He probably should have known better. Well, you just, right there, he walks backwards on his own words. But I know he regrets his involvement and wishes he hadn't been involved. Yeah, bullshit. During the winters, I also work as a referee for a local high school wrestling. I've had the opportunity to see Brandon as a great family man, always supporting his two boys when they wrestle. To me, I don't ever touch that. That goes without saying. This case has now been going on for around 5 years and has already caused much hardship and strain for Brandon and his family. Too bad. I hope you can see your way to understanding they have been through punishment enough already. Sincerely, Raymond Schnitker, USTA District 8 Director. Am I right, Alice?
Yes.
Now, what does it say in the USTA bylaws regarding the conduct of directors? We've talked about this a few times. What's their primary job and objective? What do they ask to hold themselves to when it comes to conduct and conflict of interest and being supporters of the sport, not detrimental to the sport? Am I right?
100%.
Aren't there rules written in there that people have been punished to the point of they lost their membership for doing the exact same thing without any type of hearing and or right to appeal? Am I right?
100%.
So what's different about this guy? Why is it that a USTA director, would not only support this person, but in his own words, made an excuse for him? Because I want to walk back to this one where he says, he said, Alice, where, and this is what I want people to understand. And I'm going to post this everywhere for everyone to read. But I found it upsetting and unfortunate that he felt obligated to take orders from his former employer. That would be Rene Allard. Am I right?
You're right.
Okay. He knew the job description because I know who the person was that, I don't want to say hired him, but it was instrumental in the smooth transition and training him as to how the Rene Allard barn worked, what they did, how they treated their animals. Wouldn't that be a Sean Christner? Am I right?
You're 100% correct.
That's who he was replacing. I knew Sean very well. I knew what they did, and I took very good notes. You and I won't go into what I've done and what information I've handed over, but we'll leave that alone for another day. So what I'm saying is Ray Schnitker is nothing less than full of shit. Am I right, Alice? Don't we understand? Isn't it safe to say that when Brandon Simpson took that job, was being trained, was shown everything that others were not privileged to understand, right? If he had any reservations, wouldn't he have just walked away?
All depends what kind of moral character you have.
Right. He was getting paid very well because we all know Rene pays well. And any morals or any moral compass or any him abiding by any rules, all he saw was gain, and he just joined the team.
None of them would have quit except they got caught.
Right. None of them quit until they got caught. None of them showed remorse until they got caught. Correct?
That's how it always is in horse business.
And even worse, isn't Ray Schnitker the same guy? Now I'm going to this is where I laugh and it gets personal. We all know why we know yours, you have your story. You can tell that if you whatever. But my story is, again, I got thrown out of Goshen Historic Track for complaining on the internet about the ice in the barn area, right? Alice, you know the story.
Yeah.
Ray's wife, Janet Durso, is on the board and voted, as well as the other ones. And I'm going to read, when I read the second letter, I'm going to show everybody how that's all connected. But what else did Ray Schnitker do in regards to me, where he went on the record in an NJRC investigation where there was an altercation? Was it 2.5 years ago now? I can't even remember. Yeah. In the paddock of the Meadowlands, when he attacked a gentleman who I was caring for a rescue horse at cost $500 a month. His reasoning, and who was the presiding judge again back then? I forgot. At the Meadowlands. Feraldo's. Starts with an S. Feraldo's old trainer, where he goes and says that he's, I always forget. But he did the investigation against Surik too in 2018. He presided.
Well, no one really did that investigation.
Well, that's not my point here. But what I'm saying is, when he was investigating, the investigator who called everybody, was all telephonic. Schnitker went on the record saying that the reason that he attacked Dave Yarrick was because he was giving money to Mike Petrelli. Right?
Yeah, that might have been Trapanese.
No, it wasn't Trapanese. It was the other guy. I forgot. But either way, my point again is, here he is supporting this guy who is clearly guilty of risking the welfare and safety of racehorses, as well as drivers, anyone in a race, because this crap that they were putting in these horses could cause the worst, and is altering the outcome of legalized gambling events. Correct?
100%.
Yet Ray Schnitker is a USTA director who's never questioned by, I'm not even going to go into Russell Useless Williams or anybody else in the executive board, but attacks an older man who has nothing to do with anything other than they're mad at him because he may be somehow supporting me where I may be able to earn a living when I was out of the industry then completely, right? But will support what is nothing less than a criminal. That's okay. So now we go on, and you sent me another one that because you said these came concurrently in the same file, right?
Yes, they're all available to everyone.
No, I know, but I'm saying that this just shows you where everybody really is. And I didn't, now this is from a well-respected, like I said, business here and connection to a gentleman and family who have done a lot for this area, this village, town, and that being the Danas. But here we have an owner, Patrick English, and he's using the Dana Distributors letterhead. Okay, so to me, that means that Dana Distributors stands behind his words. He even says it here. So he's an owner. To Judge Castell, I have known Brandon since 2016. I am Brandon's current employer at Dana Distributors Incorporated since September 21st, 2020. Only a few months after he got, right? Suddenly he finds a job and is, an upstanding citizen. Dana Distributors Incorporated is the Anheuser-Busch InBev and Keurig Drive Pepper Snapple distributor for 5 counties in the Hudson Valley. In Brandon's 3 years here as a Class A CDL driver, he has delivered over 618,000 cases and over almost $10 million in gross sales. What does this have to do with him being a criminal in harness racing? My dispatcher, Jeff, and his director supervisor, Tom Dorsey, consider him one of our top drivers, and I consider him an integral member of our delivery team. Without Brandon, it would be a significant hardship to our business. They've been in business for how long and never had a problem, right? I have known Brandon since 2016, and my role as a board member of the harness racing facility, Goshen Historic Track. And I never looked at this before. That name never meant anything to me. And a managing partner of Nolan Mora Racing LLC. I invest in standardbred horses with trainer Ray Schnitker at Goshen Historic Track. I
Well,
understand.
there's your answer.
There you go. Wow. I understand the cutthroat nature of horse racing as a business. That even when you do everything 100% correct in training a well-bred horse, you can still lose everything. It is that nature of the business that drives people to do anything and everything that they can to be successful. And I was upset to learn that Brandon's former employers were instructing him to cheat. No, you have the option of saying no. He knew what he was doing going in, and he was well compensated for it. Brandon was not forced to follow his employer's instructions, contradicting himself here, and should have disregarded them because he knows better. Well, he didn't. Now, did he? I know that he regrets cheating terribly. When the opportunity arose to hire Brandon here at Dana, I didn't give it a second thought. And our company is better for having him. And you're willing to put that name behind it, which is going to look great on Facebook, on every local group page, Goshen, Chester, Orange County, Middletown, especially when I start naming some names here. We've got an election coming up, a re-election of the gentleman who owns the restaurant directly below me, who I'm going to mention in a few seconds. Brandon is loved by everyone at Dana Distributors. He is a great father, husband, and I'm happy to see Brandon successful in his second career as a bud man, as we call it. Patrick English, owner, Dana Distributors, and Nolamora Racing LLC. Right, Alice?
It's pretty scary.
Right. Now, here's where I look, and now I had an argument with the gentleman downstairs a couple of years ago because I was trying to take videos of where I'm banned from the roof that he doesn't own. But anyway, we settled all that. But Mr. Betro downstairs, who's the town supervisor, also owned racehorses at the time. And that's what spurred the argument when I kept telling him, and I kept telling his partner and the gentleman who was driving for him and got him to buy racehorses, Jason Bartlett, that the trainer that you have, Jose Luis Godinez, was the trainer who was fronting for none other than Thomas Guido III. And I said, it's going to look really bad. God forbid this blows back on people. You're a politician, and I said it to Jason. I said it to Joe. Why would you risk this, man? Give the horses to anyone except Godinez, right? But then you start to look at this Goshen Historic Track Board of Directors. And again, here's all the connections. Ray Schnicker, his wife, is a director. Kerry English, I think that's the brother to Patrick English, both Dana Distributors, both board members. And then at the bottom, Joseph Betro, who no longer owns horses because he actually screamed at me last year? I don't own any more fucking horses. I'm like, good, Joe. Why would you risk yourself? So what does it all mean, Alice? What did we call it? The club? The what club?
It's the good old boys.
Yeah, the good old boys. They will snuff out your lights if you're a nobody, right? And we, certain people I'm not going to talk about, but the bottom line is if they don't like you and they have nothing to gain by having you continue, you're out. And this is, again,
They'll bury you.
Right. And we've argued about this where I've said to you, well, why doesn't Russell Williams move on guys like Nick DeVita? How come Russell Williams and the UST hasn't taken the membership from our other friend, Howard Taylor, with every man? And we talk about reciprocity. So I want you to segue into this. You're going to take over here. I've said my piece. You tell.
I think those two letters, Mike, really demonstrate what's happened to the business for years.
Right.
And just being at Goshen, and everyone knows that. Look, congratulations, because I got thrown out of there too. But they wrote me a letter and said it was a mistaken identity. And I think everybody knows what I look like. I think everybody knows what husband looks like. But I think it's not my words that say it best. I'm going to read you something that is from it's from the United States District Court, Southern District, signed by Damian Williams.
He's Southern
Or
District.
signed by Sarah Mortazavi, but submitted by Damian Williams.
She was the lead prosecutor, or one of the prosecutors.
Pardon?
Explain to everybody that, again, that's a name everyone should know. She was a prosecutor against all these criminals in harness racing.
Yes. And this was her closing statements when she sat in Fishman. And it just, to me, it was a brilliant statement. And it says that she asked she said that a guideline sentence is necessary to afford adequate general deterrence.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes on to say, as the government has argued in prior submissions, many actors in the racehorse industry, like the defendant, have grown indifferent to and dismissive of the notion of obtaining illegal drugs to dope racehorses for profit.
Now, can
Many,
go ahead. Oh,
like the defendant, believe that if caught, they will have the wherewithal and the means to bully, intimidate, or pay off whomever threatens their corrupt activities. Imposing a substantial sentence here would send a strong signal to others thinking of engaging in such criminality that there will be consequences for their crime. It will likewise counter the view that selling and administering PEDs is inconsequential and is not subject to serious punishment. That's where a U.S. attorney recognizes that it had been going on for years because of all the evidence submitted in the case. They worked those cases in numerous years. But when you look at the fines and the suspensions for serious PEDs, there isn't a fine or suspension really. Some get 30 days, 15. Mm-hmm. They all try to plead, just like some of those letters written. It's contamination. No, that's not contamination. I'm going to explain a totally different perspective. That sentence, the bullying and retribution that a person is subjected to by the leaders of the sport is severe.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we
said.
I
don't believe in going with the little guys, trainers. I'll go with the number one. And why I sought out all the information in the federal trials, why I devoured every transcript. One of the biggest leaders in the sport and well respected by many shouldn't be respected at all. That's Joe Feraldo. Matter of fact, he goes over to that barbecue at Schnickers. Had horses over there. They all knew at Goshen Ross Cohen was doing those drugs.
And he was.
They gave him stalls.
Gave him stalls and also just remind everyone that Ross Cohen, while he wasn't welcome in harness racing, was working as the assistant director of racing, hired by Steve Jones.
Yeah, they called him the speed director. He wrote press releases. Everybody said he wasn't there, right?
He was on the radio.
But yet he admitted in the trials, every time he was suspended and got his license back, he'd go back to doing the same things. And he still communicates quite a bit with Feraldo on social media.
Which is amazing.
And what knocks people to the ground. and they share the same views, the same ideas. Everyone knew in Goshen that Grasso was there for years. My God, all the federal exhibits show so. But getting back to Joe, a long time ago, naive, believed that you follow the rules, play by the rules, believed in Jefferson, play by the rules, just succeed on your own ability.
Mm-hmm.
It's delusional, that way of thinking in racing. But I always said the acceptance and the tolerance would be the demise. And I don't speak for these big people, these people that were the bully, did the bully, that made the payoffs. I speak for every horseman that works 7 days a week, that has to settle for their fourth and fifth place money, or ship a horse to an amateur event because they get a couple $100. You're afraid to speak. You're afraid to try to make changes in your own life. Years ago, veterinarian Monty Sachs administered a lot of, everybody had positives on a drug named ephedrine. And it was him. They had a tape recorded conversation of Mario Russo, who said it was him. And I raised my right hand in an administrative hearing. That hearing affected me because of the retribution. And the retribution was just severe. Old Marvin Newberg represented Sachs, and Feraldo represented the other. And I found it quite odd that they were allowed to do that, because Feraldo drove a horse for Mono, who had a positive too, for the same drug.
Mm-hmm.
I think the horse's name was in Josephine Feraldo, and I kept all the records. But numerous horsemen were going to lose their insurance. Numerous horsemen were going to get days and couldn't work. Gave the veterinarian the opportunity to come in, tell the truth. Now, he couldn't tell the truth. I was called in by management, Monticello Raceway, that if I testified, they'd see to it that I never worked another day in harness racing in my life. Well, they lost. And probably about 17 days, 16 days, in an administrative hearing with a tape recorded confession, they dragged me through the ring room, Joe Feraldo and Marvin. So I was real sick at the time, and I'd been in the hospital a long, long time. In an administrative hearing, I had to admit about 2 partial mastectomies. I had seizure after seizure. They got the privilege of walking over the top of me and seeing me lay on the floor. And I swore in my life that no one would ever go ahead and have that retribution again. But I learned a lot from that hearing. I learned the kind of men they were. And I just gathered the data, did what I could. They kicked me out of Monticello, I think 5 years, but eventually kept going to court. Found out so many things. They wrote letters to Saratoga, had my husband kicked out of there. And it just kept going. And their good old boys club, they joined them. I stood a stallion named Reagan's in New York. And they called up everybody, said if you bragged to them, they wouldn't do business with you anymore. They falsified records. I caught all the falsified records. And Mike, to make it clear, there was a lot of good people in the middle of all of it.
True.
And I was able to crack the codes and obtain information from FOIL requests and from state officials that gave me their internal emails. At that time, I went to the late assemblyman. He's dead now. And he gave me all his records and the letters they wrote about me. The largest leaders of the sport for writing letters about me that were so false. And now I laugh about it because I know who they are and they know who they are. But they write letters about me. I've never been charged with drug violations. I've been thrown off the track for reporting it unsafe. I've been thrown off the tracks for saying that you're racing a horse with strangles. I've been thrown off another track 20 years later when the thoroughbreds Indiana brought the strangles there to the county fairgrounds for the standardbreds and had to cancel the races. So retribution, I know. And I also know Joe Florida. And Yonkers is a cesspool. It's a shame because everyone, the majority of the participants in Yonkers, their names are all in the federal exhibits. I know everything they bought and everything, their check numbers that were paid for.
Do you want to mention what you told me earlier that were going to get to me too late for me to pour over regarding?
Pardon?
Do you want to mention what you told me about a half hour before we went live when you wanted to send me another file? But I said, it's kind of too.
What I did is through this, and all the leaders know, Joe knows. All right, all of them know.
Mm-hmm.
You can go into Pacer, you can read the transcripts, you mark for an exhibit, you write them down. 20, 30,000 pages, I guess I've read. I actually memorized and made lists as I was reading and requested the exhibits. Mike, the last 2 years, you of all people know I've sent you the exhibits. I've sent you the ECFs. I tried to go ahead and say, wake up regulatory agencies. Here's the wiretaps, like I Gillis, Rob Harmon, Bueter, Malone, heck, even the Olympic team vet. It's all there. And everybody ignored it. But it's hard to ignore anymore because even, as we speak, more exhibits are getting unsealed. But the situation with the Yonkers, you don't like to start from the bottom up. You start from the top down because that's the only way to fix anything.
Right.
Right? It's just the way it is. When this indictment happened, everyone knew that I did business with Brooks. Accidentally, the head of the harness horse breeders got introduced and brought him over to my farm. I never used the computer, just worked because I was tired of the people. I learned a lot from him. Actually, I'll say that Jeffrey Brooks is probably one of the smartest men there is. He showed me how the big breeders hid the assets from the United States government. He showed me how he did that with Kentuckiana, that Ken Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, Ken Jackson came up with these penny loafers and testified for Brooks. Why he's on the commission? It was unbelievable. The large people in the industry, they sat back, they fought for Brooks. Here we're fighting for Kentuckiana. We're fighting for Brooks. These big trainers. But Mike, what they did to horses was unbelievable. But what they did to the good people in this industry is worse. And the silence become deafening. So the transcripts ended up saying it quite a bit, said it all. And what I did is there's a massive exhibit. It's the Avamark file. The Avamark file was stored in the cloud, submitted to federal district. It's released publicly. They redacted the names, but they didn't redact the horses.
Yep.
They didn't redact the purchases.
Which I've been trying to explain to people. You look at the account number, you look at the date, you look at the horse's name, you go back on pathway, who owned the horse then.
So I cross-referenced, made a little spreadsheet for myself, cross-referenced every single horse, every single date, who the owner was and who the trainer was. And then certain people would be partners, and you'd see the percentages, and you knew whose account was what.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you ended up getting end up with another Excel hard drive, shoot, there's another 15,000 pages. And I explained to the leaders of the sport, explained it to Campbell, explained it to people in USTA. This information is the demise of our industry, and gave them an opportunity for themselves to try to help the honest working class horseman to fix the laws that are obsolete, to turn the information over to the district attorneys and state regulators. Because, after all, Ms. Mortazavi and the U.S. government left it open so that they could. It didn't say they dismissed it, although they did write an agreement for Ross Cohen so that sports bribery charges wouldn't go pending. But no one has helped. No one decided it was a problem. Matter of fact, I just noticed recently that there's a fellow out in Delaware that finally took an action, which I think is so positive for this industry.
Isn't that the...
But I came on here, look, we got a problem, and we all know it.
Well, I think what we got to, what people really want to hear from anyone is now. And what are we seeing, Taylor, that what happened at Yonkers,
Well, what you're seeing, and I'll say this.
And the why. The why. That's the thing, the why.
Well, the MGM, they did, get their own statement. They were overextended, and there were financial matters, pending. They sold Northfield too. But I will say this. The retribution that Joe Ferraldo caused in my life made me so passionate that I didn't want all of you other horsemen to fear his wrath. Now, Mike, this will have to be a little slow, and hopefully you'll be able to pick me apart on these.
Well,
when I finished gathering partial document, which is huge, I published that. I put that on another website. I think I've even sent it to you.
Mm-hmm, I saw it.
And in that document, all the trainers that were drugging horses. This document didn't release everybody. All you small guys out there, you don't have to worry. In government submission, it was the largest purchasers that were the repetitive purchasers. I took that document, compiled it. I sent it to Mr. Pretlow, head of Ways and Means.
Now, for people,
Conversed with him numerous times.
No, just quickly for people.
Actually,
Alice,
told him
for people
it's
that
a political genocide.
Right, but for people who don't understand, whose boy is that?
Well, it's not about boy. Mr. Pretlow is head of Ways and Means for New York State.
Right.
All right. Mr. Pretlow and all those politicians' races and major contributions for the standard SBOA of Yonkers,
SOAMY.
Owners Association. They say they give a lot of money to Pretlow. All right. They give a lot of money to these campaigns.
They're lobbying him and making donations.
Yes. And then the casino, the members on the casino group that make the decisions on the casino license from gaming.
Right.
And I'll just have to say it candidly, those members, they know. All of New York gaming has known this. I mean, for God's sake, Malin was calling for Aldo when they were testing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It's all in the federal transcripts, but he still has a job. So when I gave this information to Pretlow, it was a short time later. He said, "Oh, we'll have a hearing. We're going to have this. We're going to do that." No, they had this mock hearing that they bought the new machine that can test for anything. And there still hasn't been a lot of testing. But meanwhile, they left the fella in place that was telling them to burn the records, get rid of the invoices, you can't do this. And, you little criminals at Yonkers, he's protected you well. But I was smart enough to make a layman understand it. And I made graphs of your races every day. And you robbed this industry. And you guys know who you are. And you honest guys, you little guys, that's the reason you can't compete there. That's why they deny your entries. I mean, for God's sakes, the Blue Chip Matchmaker series there. It says right on there, but they can deny your entries. How the hell can they deny anyone's interest? Blue Chip Matchmaker could deny anyone's interest in that series when Blue Chip is 1664, account number 1664.
That's right.
The checks are there. The mnemonic EPO, VO2 max, growth hormones.
Growth hormones for the babies. I couldn't believe it.
You little guys, you can't afford to breed a horse anymore because you're not going to put your horses on the equine growth hormones like half of these have. I read an article, one of the farms, Southwind, I think, Lower Young, was really upset with Campbell and people in the sales, rightfully so. But are they upset with their owner? Their owner from Walmart, Kenny Jacobs, who was Josh Marks's partners? Or when I was standing in the meetings in the Ag Fund in New York, asking to talk and show them, explain what was coming, it was like a little boy.
Question real quick.
He called me a fraud. Ran out of the room.
Question real quick. Is there any money from the Ag Fund injected into the Blue Chip Matchmaker series?
I don't know. I didn't study that, but what I did study is Yonkers to the T. Their employees. All right. No, I was in an Ag Fund meeting. All right. And it's just criminal. I had an Ag Fund meeting. Oh, and they were talking about when Ferriero was removed because they said fixing the draw. They tried to say that didn't perform his duties, but he got a pension from it. Lisa Lee did that investigation. Joel Levinson did that investigation. I have the report. They thought they buried it. Who's he partners with? They went right back. I think Scotty Domenico and Joe. That's where he's got his horses. People don't have to hide behind these truths. It's all there before you. It's, and then it continues. Joe got away with that crap with myself. People shaking his hand, kissing babies, giving Pretlow money, having the politicians' races. Got away with it for quite a few years. But the record speaks for itself. His trainer was indicted. You have those citizens, right? You have Connor Flynn's, I sent him to you. The drugging, the doping, the introduction of mislabeled and unadulterated drugs. Mm-hmm. These are all crimes that have been covered. And you little people accept it day after day. But the killer was when Joe Feraldo, Howard Taylor, and Mark Ford went to New Jersey and represented Zurich.
2018, right?
Yeah, yes.
Northern Virgin.
They represented Zurich. And that hearing, I've sent you the transcripts, became an absolute farce. Feraldo did all the talking. Taylor did all the talking.
It was Salerno, by the way, that was the presiding judge.
Yes. And Lord, did they just keep railroading and lying and lying and lying. And they knew the truth. They knew the truth. Because when you read the federal transcripts, right, and the Nick Zurich sentencing, and you read all the records that are available, my God, they falsified the shipping receipts.
Right. So the horse wasn't there.
We all know who the shipper was there.
Right. And where he went, too.
Pardon?
And where he went, too.
Yeah, they falsified where he went. They falsified the date he went. And they knew the truth. That's what's sad. Then they tried to blame some other one person. That person got indicted. Right? But there's no mention of EPO and the Racing Commission hearing. Right? There's no mention of it. They didn't mention that person's name in the original hearing. So you knew there had to be a story somewhere. And they covered the story. And they covered numerous stories. So the bottom line is that, Mike, I sent those documents to MGM, Pretlow, New York State Gaming, all the gaming associations. They can't, they decided they weren't going to do anything because their house is so dirty. And they all knew. And thank God, in those meetings, I still have the conversations of record. They all knew.
Well, the thing is, you sent them. There's another gentleman who I keep, I don't mention his name, who has a lot of influence and actually comes from the school, worked in track management on both thoroughbred and harness side. He sent it, and I even sent it.
Well, they've had it. Look, Mike, this is what I think is funny. I have their own internal emails and their own voice recordings from high-ranking people. They were just going to go ahead and say that I was crazy. They were going to. They told everybody, "Don't listen." Oh, she's crazy. Well, I was crazy enough. I should say passionate enough to gather all their documents and just keep gathering them. And it's so self-telling. It's you've done a good job giving the Taylor documents. I think some of this is just going to be so damning. And, it's not just Taylor. You look at Joe Feraldo, Drew Malika, Feraldo, Howard Jacobs, a bunch of these attorneys. They're all on the exhibit list, Beltrami, for buying these PEDs.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all lawyers. And they all know what they're doing. It's odd in Nick Zurich's sentencing. He's thanking Drew Malika for getting him a lawyer, right? Zurich is thanking Drew Malika, getting him a lawyer. O'Connor Flynn, he used Malika to represent him. So, when you're indicted and you commit crimes, you get the whole discovery file. So they all know what's in this discovery file. And then you look and see. Taylor wasn't licensed in New Jersey, but that ProHack go under another attorney license. These guys have been doing this throughout the country. And they come in, they intimidate the judges, they intimidate the state officials, they intimidate the commissions. Just like Mortazavi said, the bullying. In that hearing in New Jersey, all they did was bully Salerno. And then expect him to go ahead and take a blame.
And something that when I read this letter from this guy English, and we say it all the time, everyone knows it. The money people go to these guys. The big money owners want to win races. They're aware of it. They know what they're going to get in return. They know what their trainer does. And this guy, Patrick English, write in a letter in support of someone who's clearly guilty of what he did, says to a federal judge, because of the cutthroat nature of the business, you do everything correct. Training, you can still lose everything. It is the nature of the business that drives people to do anything by saying it's acceptable.
Yes.
That's what drives me nuts. And this is a guy who's involved with a very well-respected local business here that everyone seems to think that it's okay to be a criminal in harness racing. And if you're not, and you're one of the honest people and you speak up against the criminals, Sarah Mortazavi recognized and spoke right into the record that if you try to do the right thing, like many of us have learned, you're done.
Well, it's the retribution. But what's great is the records show it.
Mm-hmm.
All right? It wasn't all these trainers paying for the drugs. Fishman says it right, very clear. All right? In the wiretaps, right?
VIP
they
owners.
All say it real clear.
VIP
they
owners.
Said 10% of all trainers are snitches.
Oh, okay.
He makes the drugs for the owners.
Right.
He says it's in the records. So all those owners that sit out there, and I can name them. I mean, you've seen it, the Provost articles, the Casolinos, the Dylan Davises, all buying their EPO, growth hormones, Blue Chip, Grossman. It's all right before you. And they sit on the boards. They sit on the Hamiltonian Society. They sit on USTA. Ford does a stupid interview with Canada and said he never knew. This is disgraceful.
I didn't know.
You put it on the show 2 years prior and he never walked away.
I was sick to my stomach.
And it's almost hilarious, but they make the decisions for you people's lives, for the small working class. And you hear it like these big owners and I could go on having their meetings, less racetracks, more affluent. The one thing I can say, I don't know Gorell. Seen him one time in my life. But there seems to be a conscience for the working class. There seems to be a conscience of protecting the industry.
He said it today.
And when I read these articles today, And they're like sickening. All right? Because let me explain, Mike. When this is all done and over with, right? Then you got Bowden. A year or so ago, down in Lexington, the needles and syringes with his barn help,
Mm-hmm.
right? $5,000 fine for Bowden.
Right.
Gets to go to the Breeders' Crown. You know what board he sits on? Sits on the Hamiltonian Society board. Turns around and he sits on Gluck Research Equine
Okay.
in Kentucky. They do the drug testing there, right? Talk about an advantage. You look at the federal transcripts, the guy that you always say you don't know about it or you don't care about that thoroughbreds, but the guy that
Just not my thing.
represents Godolphin, Branahan,
Mm-hmm.
he sits on the board for Gluck too. Who won the Kentucky Derby this year?
Godolphin.
Godolphin. Who won the Oaks? Godolphin. Kylie Zorn, under indictment. He gets to go, brags about his second place horse in the Oaks. So everybody knows what the heck's going on because all this information is available to everyone. What I really ask is the working class people. They took your money. They took your money.
They take the
made
money.
you when you're worried about your mortgage and you can't feed your kids.
I tried to say this. You're using my words now where I said, like, even when people, I'll say that word, but it's kind of a gauge of where people's heads are. Horse plop. They attack me more and call me a rat when in fact they're in the game, unless they're one of the criminals. I say to them in response, then it doesn't bother me. It's not affecting me. It's affecting you.
Well, I'll tell you what. So
If you're racing,
it's shameful because you take Breeders' Crown this week, the eliminations. Sitting up there, that horse that beat Loose Print.
oh, we'll say the Oaks.
Yeah, Susan Oaks.
Ex-wife and son. And
it gets better. Her name's all through theirs. Her transcripts are right there. Right? They're all there. It's an embarrassment that this country would allow that. All right? To go up to represent Breeders'
Crown.
It's embarrassing when the grooms from these big farms there in Kentucky that these guys come, and that's where they drop them off at their farm so they can blow their heads off. And they're sick and tired of watching it. Well, it's embarrassing, and they don't think about long term. Thank God USTA sanctioned those people with Zurich. When is it not a crime trying to hide the assets from the United States government and they're doing business with Zurich while he's in the pen?
Yep.
And you sit on the boards and you pay your fines. You pay your fines because you robbed the rest of us. And you know what? They don't want to talk about it. But we'll talk about it. They take licenses. People buying five invoices. They take the license, right? They let the other guys expire. Why? Because they all did business with them. You remember when they said, hey, Rene, you remember when Howard did that thing? Rene Allard did that interview magazine. Rene Allard, oh, this is not a crime. You just bought in bulk. Well, Taylor, you did too. Year after year after year since 2009, you bought bulk for every one of those horses.
Well,
So it is a crime.
Of course it is.
Blue Chip, you did the same thing. You were sitting there with Josh Marks for years and years. Thought it was okay.
And something else people we got to mention though, also not only are they operating the way they operate, they're awarded and rewarded by the state through the Department of Agriculture.
Yeah, 100%.
That's state money.
vote to give themselves breeders awards. Mike, I have an email, and it's the greatest thing. It's an email from a state official. We're going to announce at Harrisburg that they're giving more breeders awards, even though we haven't passed the law. That will increase the sales for the big breeders. But we got to be careful of who gets a hold of this. I got a hold of it.
Is this the state of New York?
Your game.
Is it New York?
Yes.
New York, where it's dying still. It's literally dying in front. I'm saying, well, let's look at up the street. I think the average per year for a yearling here was 15.9 and change.
Well, it should have been 3,200.
Right. I call it the new Old Glory sale.
It should have been 3,200. You know why? That middle guy that kept his brood man that wants to breed to those farms, they tell you can't breed there. They reserve those breedings. You can save for 3 years to breed one of their studs.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But guess what? It's not going to happen. All right.
Well, they snuffed that guy out that inevitably came to me looking for some kind of help. And then once the heat was on, he just went completely silent from that farm down here in Warwick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not even going to mention it because another gutless coward, it's gutless, but again, they're going to lose initially if nobody's
the
watching.
Part is, like just recently, when a fisherman's in his appeal, the restitution and forfeiture, they sent it back to a lower court, which was good because they published that victims list early on. So
if people understand, that means I want them the horsemen to understand if they hear what that meant. They thought that was a bad thing. That's a good thing because the money was going to the state, not to the horsemen.
Go to the state racing commissions,
the racing commissions,
the pharmacies that fill the prescriptions, and all
because they were hurt,
and the racetrack owners, and every one of them had been paid already. The money belonged to the horsemen.
Yeah, where wasn't it going? The people who are actually affected.
Yes.
The people that don't stand a chance racing against these criminals.
100%.
And so they did the right thing.
It's going back to the lower court, and I think that will be finalized. But the working class horsemen, that was your money.
1,000%.
I mean, just in that, I think, and I read in either Simpsons or Connors, 16 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they didn't commit a crime, how are they liable? Right? 16 million is a lot of money. It's inconceivable that a record-keeping agency or a regulatory board never requested all the documents, the exhibits, or read them for the last 5 years. Do you know why? You have a leader like Joe. Oh, there's not much there. They're a record-keeping agency. It was the duties of the commissions to look at this, read this. Look, Mike, you know how it was. You were one of the only standardbred people that went to the trials.
I was the only standardbred person, period. Other than the criminals.
They didn't go. The media, they didn't cover it because if they did, I spoke to a dear Grunner. I'm not going to be the Denise of the sport. I'm not going to be this. But damn it, you harness people, something's wrong because the thoroughbreds did a good job of covering that up.
Thoroughbred Daily
And
News,
thank God I
Pilot
still
Report,
have all their exhibits.
Blood Horse. Those top three were always on it.
Yeah, but they didn't put out what was out there. All right, they didn't put out the Gagliano and those guys. They made sure that the standardbred industry knocked to its knees. But the thoroughbreds were just as big.
Yeah, no, the standardbreds took the heaviest hit. That's true.
Harness racing look at, if I can, I don't know, let me see if I can turn on this Hey, I'll read you this, and maybe on the next show.
I was going to say we're at an hour right now, so
Maybe on the next show. Let me read you this, and you're going to love this one, okay? And it's just an exhibit that that I think that everybody can understand, and it's a conversation, and it's their extractions, and it works out, but I don't understand. The guy is still licensed, right?
who?
That let me see. Give me just 1 minute, Mike.
Should I go to a commercial break? This segment has been brought to you by
The
Equistology.
bottom line, it's an exhibit, all right? From a horseman, leading guide, buying 98 bottles of TB7 and 10 bottles of Mnemonic EPO.
Who is this?
A leading trainer. We'll go into it because I want you to have the exhibit beforehand. But this computer is like on overload. And I'll send it. I'll send it to you. Still racing horses.
Now, is this is a clean invoice? Meaning name,
It's an
account?
extraction.
Okay,
It's a government exhibit.
right. And it names the trainer?
Oh, it names the trainer, yeah.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Because maybe we'll throw this out there after when we log off, send it to me and I'll do a little tease. And then, like you said, next time we'll address what you were telling me before we went live was this whole other list of trainers and buys. That's again.
Yeah, and Mike, just truthfully, at the end of the day, I sent all those files to all the commissions.
Mm-hmm.
I sent them to numerous people. Just sent them the complete exhibits so that way they didn't have to go on Pacer. They didn't have to search. It was real easy to get to.
Right.
And look how long it takes. They've done nothing.
It's been almost 3 years since they've initially been made aware of this, right? Pushing 3.
Well, yeah. I'm laughing because when I have the state investigators tell me they went to the commission and they want to do this and they see it and they say no. That happened in Jersey. Happened in Jersey.
Wasn't Mr. Garral at one of those where he actually stood up himself?
Yes.
And confronted the commission and they basically laughed in his face?
Yeah. Yes, that's true. But
the owner of the only racetrack
like
left.
MGM recognized you can't run a criminal and have a casino and run a sidebar criminal enterprise.
And am I wrong by saying that they recognize that it's what made it worse is the same commission who licenses those people who we're talking about? Like, we'll just use a DeVita, Prevost, Taylor, right? Who are racing for the state gaming money through VLTs, is also the same commission who's choosing who will be issued one of these these 3 casino licenses. It's
100%.
the same organization, the same commission, New York
100%.
State Gaming, and they have their own conflict of interest.
That is as truthful as could be. That is why I don't like the way Heist is set up now, but I do believe that there has to be some type of federal regulation, or that every commission has to have a state police. And what these guys don't realize, the statute isn't up. All right? Federal racketeering, RICO actions, the statute is not up. And drop this information in a district attorney's And if it takes myself, I guess maybe that's what I need to do. Because if I don't, in 10 years, you guys aren't going to be here, and it's probably going to be less than that.
I think they're done. I think it's inevitable. I think they're finished. Like, see, I'll compare this to what I'm involved with in New York City with, fighting the carriage horses. There is a unity, and the people who are in agreement that it needs to end, we all go to City Hall together. We formulated a base of people, citizens, residents, everything who are finally on board. There's no hesitation for, if you agree with what we're doing, you come and you fight with us. How many people can you say, you, me, are fighting this fight?
Mike, I'll say this.
I don't,
And I'll say this pretty honestly, okay? There's a handful, but I'll say this as truthful as I could do. In New York, I stood alone on that fight for 30 years. I have the transcripts. I spoke on Senate floor about the EPO and the blood doping and what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that fight, that standing alone was a tough battle. But sometimes when you're able to see how it's going to affect the future and how this claim game and the blood doping is devaluing every horse, you look at these records that I have, you'll see the biggest farms. You'll see Mickey Burke. You'll see Lindy Farms. You'll see the Castellinos. You'll see all of them. They did not have the right to do that to all the horses.
Well,
and all they did was use a couple altering peptides. They altered the morphine. They altered the tetramorphines. The NADL1s. The transcripts revealed how they're buying it.
But people need to
having it shipped in. Customs wasn't regulating it enough. Anchung Laboratory, Wisdom over in Dubai. It names them all.
Right, but the thing is, what people aren't realizing and recognizing is we're seeing the disassembly right in front of our eyes, piece by piece, of the industry. Right,
yes, but at the end of the day,
what I'm saying is,
at the end of the day, everybody loves horses. Everybody. Right. You could be afraid of them, if you've never been around them.
Right.
But everybody loves them.
But my point is,
and I haven't heard any of them stand up and speak for them.
Right.
While they run their tube down their throat.
Yep.
And they collapse their arteries and they blow their hearts, and they give them 10 pounds of thyroid a month.
Well, this is where I was going with this. Is it has, just because of what happened, none of this stopped. It goes on. It goes on every day.
Mike, in the real world, when I know all the suppliers, the government can't stop this. It's going to take every state agency, state police, people to get involved. Mm-hmm. And if they can't get involved, let the sport go, because it's not fair to the animals. It's not fair to the people.
In the end,
it's not fair to the public.
Right. You're defrauding the public and you just continue to abuse the animals. I tell you, there has been a massive influx of standard breds into the kill pens across the country in the last 6 weeks. They're overflowing.
Mike, I'll tell you, the little guy, they can't afford to feed him. The Amish just working like the...
You broke up.
Ford's farm.
What happened? You broke up. I missed that part.
I said, the Amish, they work them like they're a piece of machinery. They think they're replacing parts, just send them to the killers. Ford's farm, a bullet to the head. Our industry doesn't deserve this. And if PETA would go through these things, we'd be screwed. And I mean, it would be just devastating. But we have what's called leaders. Those leaders have failed. They failed miserably. When
Embarrassing.
you have a Schnicker writing a letter for the indicted.
I can't believe that. I still
When
can't
you
believe
have
they
a
have
Mark
this.
Ford who's in the transcripts that they went to his farm to meet fishermen and pick up the stuff. When you have a Ford that's sitting there claiming residency in Campbell Hall on USTA and on his taxes, and in New Jersey he claims he's a resident there to have that position so we can shake down people. And he sits on USTA board. It's inexcusable. And there's a lot more of these out there. But this was in the north. This investigation was in the Northeast primarily.
Now I want
Canada, Panama, Mexico, UAE.
let me stop.
They did a good job.
I'm going to stop you because let's save this for the next one, going into that list, because I want to keep things simplified right now for people to understand. But now I want to tell you something that I noticed. We have been on for an hour and 16 minutes. Okay.
Right.
Normally, I don't know if you're aware, there's a live chat that's next to this that goes in real time, where people can actually ask me questions during the live stream by typing in like a live forum.
Okay.
And I normally will address those to prove to you again just how scared people are. You want to know how many questions there are?
None.
0. And
there shouldn't be any questions.
Well, this should be questions, like what can we, there's got to be some interaction, and there's not.
They can't. You know why, Mike? They'll get beat up.
Oh no, I understand that. You end up with a Ray Schnicker.
They'll get called in, like they'll get called in. They'll try those gaming commissions. They'll try to threaten. All right, look firsthand. Monticello years ago.
Let's not go too deep. Let's kind of shut this down, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, but I want to repeat again for people who don't understand. Not only did the gentleman, I'm showing the letter right now in the camera, who wrote this letter in support and making excuses for Brandon Simpson and what he did. He's the guy who beat up a gentleman who I was taking care of a horse for. But we got to remind everyone, he wasn't alone. He had a partner in that physical assault on that person. And the other person was none other than Mark Ford. Just for people that don't know that story, to show you how far they'll go. And that same Mark Ford was calling and threatening that gentleman about his horse. One day, remember, I think I told you the story about how we were in the paddock with his horse and the phone rang and I'm there with the guy and it's Mark telling him he's going to come and take the horse to New Holland. Well, I'm standing there. And what was his, and I'll never forget what his exact words were. By doing business with him and giving him a horse to take care of, you're giving that effing piece of shit credibility.
Yeah.
Because they knew with me, it went so far as that I didn't give a shit anymore. And I would build credibility because I'm not going to lie. And you're not going to scare me. You're not going to coerce me like they were trying to do to him, coerce him. I haven't, it actually says in the board of directors code of conduct that they are not to abuse and harass anyone else who is in the membership, especially physically. How come the USTA never acted on that when they admit to it?
Well, that's a question. That's a question for them.
I think it's a question for.
That's a question they can answer. Well, that's not for me.
Oh no, I'm just saying. I'm bringing it out there. I'm saying that spineless jellyfish, who inherited kind of a shoe farm, should be ashamed of himself. And I'm just going to continue to
because
I haven't seen him do anything.
In business, you delegate responsibilities. And I think sometimes the delegation was just to the wrong people, and many of them never know.
Well, in the meantime, years have passed and people are suffering.
That's exactly right.
And
It's
that's it.
time to end that.
I don't want to hear excuses anymore. I'm sick and tired of it. Oh, another 2 weeks. Oh, another 6 months or whatever. What are you doing? What are they doing? They attacked someone who was defenseless with no, with
Well,
no.
I think at the end of the day, I think people recognize one thing.
Mhm.
The little guys can own them instead of them owning them. It's about time that they just stand up, take what's theirs, have a business, try to run it, and if it survives, it survives. But you cannot continue like we are.
Yeah. Let's stop
and
it.
I don't care if it's Steve Stewart, Hunterton Farm, Laura Young, Lindy Farms.
Let's stop.
It's enough.
Let's cut it right here. Okay.
Okay, doke.
All right. So
Thanks a lot, Mike.
I will talk.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
What I will do, and then
I'll
send you all the names.
That's what I want.
And all you have to do is press a button, and it loads all their invoices right to their names.
Cool. Just email me that.
This is what it takes. All I can say, it's the commission's fault because they had the information and they wouldn't sit down in private session and discuss it before it all goes public.
We've been screaming that since I did that initial Howard Taylor thing, and then that evolved into Linkmeyer, and that's where we're like, what are we doing here? But what I'll do is I'll call you, I'll talk to you again, and we'll set up the next one, and we're going to focus on that list, the new buy list with the new names. God. That's all it's going to be. So anybody that is interested, watch that video, which will be this week sometime. I got to run somewhere next 3 days, and I'll be back Thursday. So you pick the night, and I'm not going to publish any of that except maybe for the one you said there's a buy of 98 bottles of what? TB7?
98 bottles of the TB7 and a bunch of EPO.
Okay. I'm not even going to ask who it was. So when I read it, I'm going to do a little tease with that, and then we'll schedule it and go from there. Right?
All right.
Now it's way past.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
It's past your bedtime. It's 7:30. Go to bed.
Get out of here. I'm old. Thank you.
You got shit to do in the morning. Go take care of your horses. God damn it.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And that's it. There's too much to talk about in one sitting. She is the person who did enormous amounts of legwork, and sometimes I have trouble. I get very impatient, if anybody hasn't noticed. And a few times there, I'm like, I told her, I said, this time you speak what you want. I'm not going to say anything. And I wanted to speed it up a little bit because I want people to engage and understand this is not over. This is much bigger than anybody could possibly comprehend. There's still information out there that could literally blow the doors off of filling boxes at any particular racetrack where these people race. If you've been following, you know who's on the hot seat right now. He's not alone. There's more coming. Just got to wait. Oh, hang on. Let me see what she wants. Bye. She can barely use YouTube. So what's going to happen is this is going to be a long drawn out, I shouldn't say long, but a very painful, it's like pulling one tooth at a time with no anesthesia is what it's going to be like, especially for the criminals. Now I can talk about this a little bit. I could not wrap my head around that this person was involved in having an idiot like me. And this is where I can say I was exactly like 90% of the people in the business that are just little guys, families, whatever, 3 horses, 10 horses, you're alone, husband and wife, kids, whomever, who, like a lot of people that I saw up in Tioga, raced all summer won 5 races, took care of their horses, their barn, and their animals look amazing. They don't stand a chance on the racetrack. Whether that's because they don't know how to train a horse, no, I'm sorry. All things being equal, you should be able to take care of your horse correctly if you train them properly, get them fit, get them tight, get them breathing, whatever, all the shit that we all know, the basics, without the aid of this garbage that this effing USTA director defends this guy and makes excuses for him. Meanwhile, they'll attack someone who says, I'm sick and tired of, I really don't want to unload my horses on Route 207 right over here because we can't pull in to the barn area, and I don't want my mare coming off the ramp and going on her ass and breaking a fucking leg. I'm out. And now I see why. They don't, it's again, how many people are really fighting for all this? Not many. How many people are willing to speak up? None. I do have people that come to me for help, and the first thing they say is, Mike, I just can't. I understand. But they don't give me enough because they're afraid to, because it leads me to questioning others, and they'll be able to put it together. Oh, so such and such sent you here, or somebody's talking, or whatever. The fear, and like, again, when you got the lead prosecutor of this entire investigation underneath Damian Williams, and that being Sarah Mortazavi, saying onto the record and speaking to the judge and to the jury that there is a systematic culture in horse racing and harness racing, thoroughbred racing, where that self-governing entity, especially in our game, are the ones that technically they're governing and policing when they are in fact the ones who need to be questioned and tried, and the rest of the people are too scared to speak out because for fear of retribution and repercussions, which you see it and you've heard it all the time. The more we talk about it, the more we get it out there, the more we get states to recognize this and act on it, they lose their power. And it's happening. Believe it or not. Why do you think our friend is fighting so hard right now that nobody understands that he's suing states? He's suing individual judges. He's trying everything he can because we've broken the norm. We've broken their business as usual. It's not working right now. And the more we get to make this snowball, the faster they're going to fall. That's the only hope I could say for short term, where we can at least get rid of some of the scumbags and maybe give a better chance to the little guys. As for the long term for harness racing, look what's happening. We tried to give you insight and hints as to why MGM didn't about face. It's not just about their financial situation. You don't think that they knew this months ago while they were having the town council and municipal hearings a couple of weeks ago, where they were dancing in the streets in Yonkers, that the residents and the politicians of Yonkers, the city of Yonkers, voted yes, we want the casino. And years of, like Mayor Spano said, of negotiating and lobbying and the environmental impacts and the studies and the traffic and everything and all that, and then suddenly, nope, we're out. They knew this long ago. Goes back to when Feraldo wanted the 7 years, I think it was, and then they, month to month to month, and then how long ago was it when they got the 3 years? It's just a few weeks ago. It all happened at once. This has all been in play. They've all been aware. There were 3 people. Alice, an individual who has the inside track to the corporate officers from managing racetracks, got the same information to MGM International and up to Albany, to the same gentleman, Gary Pretlow. I did the same thing, matched it up, whatever, but I was able to get stuff on the desk of the director of the harness racing side. How do you think we were able to get things done, like Borgo, Misty Carey, like that? They're starting to recognize that they can't ignore it because they've been exposed. We're literally having to force them to do their effing jobs. We're not guilty for doing that. We should never feel bad for doing that. None of you should ever feel bad for asking your leadership and your governing and policing bodies to do their job, which is to protect you and the animals. That's the way I'm going to leave it again. New York City, oh my God, it's just crazy. I got to go back down again. Actually had, let me just talk about the carriage horses. And this blew me away. When was I there? 2 days ago? Today's Sunday. And there with Adita, and we're talking. And suddenly, and I won't give them up because they're actually being more brazen and doing it in front of the other drivers, is there's drivers who've actually shook our hands and have acknowledged that this is real. They recognize that there are drivers who've made it. You know, it's kind of like harness racing. You do have some good people there. Again, there's no excuse. Manhattan is not the situation for any horse. It's Manhattan. It's insane. None of you would ever keep your horse there or want to bring them there for any reason, I should hope. But they have accepted the fact, and there's word going around, they are now looking for places to rent to store their stuff, meaning their harnesses, their whatever it is that, you know, that they keep in a barn like we do, and their carriages themselves. So if it does happen, they can save money by either sending their horse to one of these sanctuaries that's set up by Adita, Burnt Grant, and Night Class, which there are more than enough now. Commitments have been made. There's an alliance out there that we're going to go public with soon of multiple farms run by 5 or 6 ladies who I've spoken with in Zoom meetings, and they're just on board. They'll be able to absorb all the horses with no issues. But they don't want to continue to pay stall rent to these owners of the properties that they keep saying that everyone's trying to get their hands on. No matter what you do, what's in their horses, not whatever, the owners of these properties are sitting on tens of millions of dollars in property because of where they are. They're in Manhattan, Hudson Yards, or Upper West Side on 52nd Street. Yes, they're valuable. That's it. What happens to them afterwards doesn't fucking matter. It comes down to, again, no, it's similar to these owners like this guy. There is a guy here that, is a partnership with an incredibly well-established and respected business here in Goshen, Dana Distributors, making excuses for Brandon Simpson that, well, Judge, I think you should understand that, if you're not a criminal and you're not cheating, you're not winning. And again, it's part of the fabric of harness racing, where owners and most of the people that make the big money want to go to the trainers that are willing to do the things they aren't supposed to do. They're aware of it. He's admitting it and looking for some kind of leniency that they are the fucking victim. The criminals are the friggin' victims. They don't talk about the guys that they're beating who actually don't do what they're doing, that they took advantage of. And like I said, he should have known better. He liked the money. End of story. Whether it makes you stupid or drunk, I get it. It happens. I'm collecting for someone right now. I'm on retainer through the Alliance with a horse farm, collecting a big chunk of money where stuff was disappearing. Busted them, making it right. But what's the excuse? And I've even asked the person, what were you thinking? They have no answer. You liked the money. That's it. They say it's not illegal till you get caught. Meanwhile, you got other guys that are end arounding, looking for help or whatever, that are going to the established criminals in harness racing, crying about how they've been wronged on podcasts with guys that stole hundreds of millions of dollars over 50 years and are banned from the game. It just blows me away how in the end, once they've been confronted, cornered, and found guilty, they're the victim. And I'm going to have a lot of fun with these 2 letters. Anyway, once I have that set, I have the other gentleman who wants to come on, talk more about what he can do positively for the game. And then we're going to go back. Once I have this file and I go over it, that means I'm going to have what you guys called the unredacted buy list and all the names on it. Catch you later.